to Sheringham, and Solskjaer has done it!
Hi guys, and welcome to Back of the Internet. I'm Jay, still no Joe, and this is Friday Night Gas. When you've got a lad as big as Joe, you need to fill a big hole with some quality talent. This is why I've drafted in Jonny. Jonny, thank you very much for being on tonight.
Oh, you're very welcome, mate. I look forward to chatting football with you.
Well, this is your first appearance on Friday Night Gas and Back of the Internet in general, isn't it?
Yeah, first of many, I hope. We'll see how it ends up afterwards.
Most definitely. Right, so I've introduced your name, but tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, and who you support.
Of course, mate. Wolvo, born and bred. Been a Wolves fan ever since 1996. Work in Birmingham, so that's a clash of cultures. But yeah, still got a season ticket to this day.
Oh, nice one. And who's your favourite player all time?
Oh, all time. Oh, you know, that's really tough.
Don't cop really out and say bully.
Yeah, you know what? It's blasphemy to not say it if you're from Wolver. If I was to throw a curveball in there, you know, it's probably Mike Stowell. Mate, he was the keeper when I first started going. I used to absolutely love him. And then current crop is probably Willy Wally.
Yeah.
Being a defender, playing defence all my life in football, I always look for the defenders first, to be honest.
Well, do you know what? When I was younger, and obviously Wolves are massive, and this is about the John DeWolf era, because I'm a little bit older than yourself.
Yeah,
David Kelly was my favourite Wolves player of all time.
Mate. And then, to be fair, that was a few seasons before I started going. I think the '96 one was like Steve Ball, Don Goodman, Andy Thompson still there. You know, Simon Osborne, the likes of it. Yeah, so. Those are my generation players.
Big fan of our ex-players, Paul Ince and Irwin.
Oh, mate, honestly, yeah, still fond memories of that promotion season where they first two signed, and yeah, and a lot of love for both of them. They're still thought of highly down at Molineux, definitely.
Well, Paul Ince is probably thought more highly down at Molineux than he is at Old Trafford. You don't leave United and go to Liverpool, man. This doesn't happen. We even gave Peter Schmeichel a pass when he went to Man City. You know what I mean?
I still remember that Gary Neville video when he away at the City, and he greeted him in the tunnel and he just blanked him off. Yeah,
he was having none of it, was he?
No, I don't blame him, man. I don't blame him.
Well, speaking of Manchester United, we're going to kick off with our first story, and we're going to look at Mason Greenwood. Is he a bad man, or is it bad media? Now, recently, Mason Greenwood has had a few troubles. He went out on England duty for his first international cap. With Phil Foden, got caught in a hotel room for a couple of Icelandic beauties. Fair play to him. And then everything else that's come out from the media recently has been that Mason is disruptive, he's late for training, and he's genuinely been a pain in Ollie's ass at the moment. However, I thought it was interesting to hear from the gaffer today that he said on Mason's behaviour and the stories that Mason's always on time. He's seen stories, actually, some ex-United players talking about him and they don't really know anything. They don't know what they're talking about because, well, we've got photographers outside the ground every day so they can see and check the time he comes in. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So Mason Greenwood, Jonny, what's your perspective on him?
Based on your question, I think it's developed from bad man. Obviously, what he did for that Iceland away game is, you know, was really poor behaviour. Him and Foden, really. You know what I mean? It's completely unprofessional, especially on international duty. But since then, I think it's developed into bad media. You know what I mean? And some of the accusations of him being late for training and that looks completely unprecedented if you believe what Solskjaer says. And it's interesting to see that Pep has sort of thrown Foden completely back into the first team at City. Yet Ollie's kind of kept Greenwood back slightly. It's a weird, contrasting how each manager's approached the subjects ever since that last international break.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Pep and Foden because I don't actually see Foden catching a lot of slack at the moment for what he's done.
Completely agree.
Initially,
it's sort of been passed over a bit compared to what Greenwood's did. But weirdly, because he's out of the limelight.
Do you think that's more to do with the fact that there's this media hype machine behind Manchester United, and everything that any of these players ever do is looked at through the finest magnifying glass, or do you think it's just a case of there's no smoke without fire?
A little. I mean, the thing I find interesting is I wonder if it's because it was on the international break right after Greenwood had really started the season on fire. Obviously, he had that performance against Bournemouth, and then the international break came a few months after. So he's still really highly thought of in terms of form. So I don't know if it's just that people expected better, and I wouldn't necessarily say so much about the Manchester United link, because I do see it as a similar kind of reaction to what Sterling has had throughout his career, and you just hope it's not that it's not that level of press coverage that he gets, and it kind of gets him the same way as it got Sterling.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that worries me a little bit is obviously he blasted onto the platform, the football, hemisphere last year. 17 goals in all competitions. He came from absolutely left field. Was part of a front three that actually outscored Liverpool's front three, which I thought was absolutely crazy when you look at it. He got his first international cap. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And then all of a sudden, it's Mason Greenwood and Phil Foden. Not Phil Foden and Mason Greenwood. They put him first. And we were talking about this in the group chat, me and a couple of lads, and I tried to pass it off as, it's just lads being lads. They're off on their first international cap, or for Mason, his first international cap. He's made a mistake. He should be punished, rightfully so. After that, stop giving the kid grief. But it just doesn't seem to have stopped for the lad. And my worry is that he's another young English talent that we're going to end up burying again if we're not careful. And I think that's when you were saying about Pep's just sort of put Foden back into the limelight after his first initial game, and let him play his game, whereas Ollie's sort of mollycoddled him a little bit. And maybe you are right. Maybe that is it hurting him a bit more than he should do?
It's interesting you put it like that, because obviously it was a different story entirely, but I kind of get the similar vibe of what Solskjaer's done with Maguire. Obviously Maguire's had that really bad run of form, and people after the England sending off were debating, should Solskjaer give him a couple of weeks away from the limelight, let him rest for a couple of games, but then he's sort of been thrown back into the first team, so you wonder what that difference is really. And on the other side of it, Frank Lampard's obviously done the same with a couple of his players that were affected on the last international break. Obviously he's thrown Chilwell back into the first team. Abraham's still in and around there as well. So it does make you question why the Greenwood case is different, and maybe it is, as you say, the media coverage has got to him more than he's let on.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, and I seem to find it, especially being a Manchester United fan, that we seem to be under the spotlight for everything. It's not just been Greenwood this season. We've had unrest with Bruno apparently kicking off with the players at half-time against Spurs, and he was pulled off, and there was leaked WhatsApp messages, and there was all this unrest, and that was all put in the papers, which Ollie came out and basically said was false. Bruno also came out and said it, which some of it, again, I feel that probably did happen, but probably not to the extent that was obviously, put the media spin on it. Like you alluded to, Harry Maguire, whether he's guilty or not, he's definitely done something. But he was thrown straight back into the team. He's played through bad form. He's had one good game, really, since we've come back. And then Greenwood, he's sort of been injured, or he's been benched, or we don't know what's been happening with him, but it just seems that another story's come out now. So in the space of what, we're on game week 6, are we? And United have played 5.
Yes.
And we've had Bruno, Maguire and Greenwood all thrown under the coals, as well as Ollie as well, by saying that his future was done and Poch was coming in as well. So I do feel at times that United are probably treated a bit more unfairly because of the stature of who we are. I mean, here's a question for you. Why haven't we, or why don't we see this with Wolves players?
I think, you know, I do wonder if part of it is the culture, and maybe a discipline issue, like the kind of aura that Nuno gives off as Wolves manager. I don't think he'd let any of this wash, you know.
No.
Obviously, we had a sort of case of it back in the summer with Morgan Gibbs-White breaking lockdown rules when around June, July time, if I remember. And we just released a short, sharp press statement to say, you know, we're unhappy with it and it's been dealt with internally. But a couple of months later, he's off on loan to Swansea, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe there's an element of dealing with things more in-house or dealing with things more in the media public eye, you know, and I wonder if it is that literally Manchester United would just sell more papers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with us, as much as we are like a famous current club, we're still not to that level of Manchester United where we're going to have these hot media interest in us, you know. So, but then you wonder how much of it is backroom stuff with Ollie maybe not having full control of the discipline of the squad.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Nuno looks like the kind of guy that doesn't take any shit, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
And
he's the kind of guy you probably wouldn't want to let down, you know. And
or annoy.
He commands that full respect. Yeah, that's it.
And I do like Nuno for that. It's we've had obviously our manager compared to being a PE teacher. Whereas when you look at Nuno, I don't think anybody's making any sort of such comparisons at all. And it's like you say, I think he commands such a high level of respect from his players. And he also treats them with that same level of respect as well. That if you are going to step out of line on his watch, there is going to be a repercussion. And like you've just said, Morgan Gibbs-White, he's miraculously on loan all of a sudden, you know. So yeah, which is a good point. So leading off from English talent, so we're happy to put that one to bed.
Yes, mate. I think we said what we need to say.
So leading on from young English talent, we're going to go into another story now, which I know is very close to my heart. Speaking to you earlier before we came on, I know that you've also got a quite a deep feeling about this as well. Unfortunately, a really, really sad and unfortunate story about the current state of the world that we're in is Marcus Rashford, who's come forward again to try and get kids free school meals in the half term. For a few people that might be watching this that don't know the backstory of it, just a really quick recap. In the early summer, Marcus put a petition forward himself to end child food poverty, that no child should be going hungry. The initiative was that the government should support vulnerable children and #end child poverty by implementing 3 recommendations from the National Food Strategy to expand access to free school meals, provide meals and activities during the summer holidays, and stop holiday hunger. He released some stats, which were at the time 14% of parents and 10% of children experiencing food insecurity over the last 6 months. 32% of families losing income because of COVID-19, which I'm pretty sure has increased dramatically since these stats are out. And demand for food banks this winter would be at an unprecedented 61% higher than last, again, which I think will have increased. With the aid of the Child Poverty Task Force, he was calling for the government to expand the free school meals to all under 16s, where a parent or guardian is in receipt of universal credit or equivalent benefit, provide meals and activities, and increase, and this is the bit that really gets to me, increase the value of Healthy Start vouchers to at least £4.25 per week. The 3 recommendations must be implemented without delay. This gained 450,613 signatures back when it was released. £4.25, Johnny, for a kid to eat for a week.
It puts things into perspective, mate. You know, it really does. Like, obviously, we're both in our 30s now, and you think, what would we just like, you know, blasé spend that £4 on?
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, just couple of pints, or a magazine even at that price in this day and age.
A couple of pints. Where are you drinking?
Mate, well, I don't drink, so for me, that's a couple of pints of Coke,
I was going to say. But yeah, I mean, the worst part of this is when I went out, because I went onto the government website to have a look at this and do some research for what I knew, what me and you were going to talk about. And it says here, Parliament will consider this for debate if it gets more than 100,000 signatures, and then wait 8 days for a debate date.
Yeah.
How this is even a debate baffles me.
Yeah, I know. I think I there's a kind of more updated one today that is now running at 400 and I think it was 416,000 when I logged in this morning. I think it was just an updated version of that same petition. And that it's the thing is now it's gone beyond politics for me. It's a basic human rights issue for me, at least. Obviously, there's some finance and economics in it, but at the end of the day, it boils down to just a basic human rights issue and giving people what they deserve just as a basic human right.
But when you look at the sort of money that the government pisses up the wall, for want of a better expression, the bonuses they've recently given to themselves, on the back of everybody being in the middle of a pandemic, this money that they've awarded themselves for a job well done, which in my opinion has been pretty poorly done. Could have gone to feed these kids for another half term. And I know, like you say, it is an economic thing. It's not something that could be economically sustainable forever. However, in the interim, and especially when we're in such a grave state as of the world as we're in at the moment, surely to God, money can be found from some pot somewhere to extend it through winter at the very least. I mean, obviously I'm originally from Wolverhampton. You're still in Wolverhampton now. We know what Wolverhampton's like. We're a big city. We do have a lot of poverty and other problems within the community. Have you seen anything from Wolverhampton or the people around Wolverhampton willing to try and put this right outside of the government's grasp? Or how do you think this is going to affect the city as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you will know as much as anyone that Wolverhampton is one of the most working class cities you can get in this country. It's not particularly a high end city by any stretch of the imagination, but what it does have is a good work ethic built into it, and people look after their own in this city, in my opinion. Today, but obviously you saw off the status I posted with regards to the pay-per-view fixtures that Sky Sports are bringing out. We're due on that against Crystal Palace next weekend, I believe. And instead of that, people are boycotting that and donating to one of the local Wolverhampton food banks, which I think just kind of sums up that kind of, look after each other.
That kind of mentality.
Yeah, certainly. And that community feeling that I have seen in Wolverhampton all my life, And as soon as I saw that, I made me pretty proud to be from that area, really.
Yeah, well, we discussed it on the last pod or the pod before last when I did quite an impassioned talk about football and giving it back to the fans and not taking basically the football away from us. And in Newcastle, they raised £60,000 by people donating to that rather than to watch Newcastle versus Manchester United. Which a little bit of me, it restores my faith in humanity when you see things like that, because there is a lot of greed out there, and we are being squeezed as football fans at the moment to watch the game that we love, which is quite, like you say, from people from a working class background. It's a working class sport. We shouldn't be having to shell out so much money for it. But if we are going to spend money, like yourself, which I think is an absolutely fucking brilliant gesture, of donating that money for to a food bank. I wish there was more good stories that were going around like that.
Definitely.
I mean, I did a bit more research into it today. This is the most prepared I've ever came to a podcast ever.
To be honest, like, when the subject's this heavy, it's all worth it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it, and I think you also alluded to it on one of your Facebook statuses earlier. when Rashford put this again to the House of Commons for it to be looked at, he asked MPs to consider the winter half terms. Winter half term, the Tories actually outvoted this by 61 counts, and it was all blue, from what you can see. A couple of Tories were voted against. A lot of it was Labour, a lot of it was Lib Dems. Getting away from the political side of things, I'm pretty sure it's a case of right and wrong, and in this instance, they're extremely wrong. Just up here, Tories voted against this as well. I live in the Fylde now, and it is, although it's up north, it's quite a conservative area. The MPs here voted against it. Burnley, South Ribble, Blackpool South especially being quite affluent area. Although Blackpool is a very, very poor part of the economy, Blackpool South isn't. A lot of people who live there are quite older, but there's also a lot of nice houses and a lot of money being spent down there. So they voted against it. And in the Midlands, leaders from Wolverhampton, South West and Stourbridge said it was, and I quote, the job of the wider welfare system to deal with this. That's incredible.
And when you look at figures of what the welfare system is now, people still struggle even on that now, let alone whatever they earn, so using the welfare system always doesn't benefit them either.
No, especially when, Rashford is lobbying for the bare minimum of £4.25. And I think I was looking at it today, it was £15 a week, which sounds more like it, but even on £15 a week, you are still going to struggle in some capacity to do that for children. What I also found out today was in Blackpool, in this region alone, 40% of kids in education already get free school meals. So that's 1 in 4 kids are also below the poverty line. And this is just in my area. Now I'm talking about a quite affluent area. And then I was on about Blackpool, but 1 in 4 kids are below the poverty line. But there are some good stories that are coming out. Deputy Police Commissioner Chris Webb has launched an initiative to provide meals, and local businesses have also kicked in to help out as well. £3,000 was raised literally last night, and it only went live, 7, 8 o'clock, which I thought was really good. I had a look at Wolverhampton just to see what was going on there. Wolverhampton Councillor Beverley, and I'm going to butcher this, so you have to bear with me. Mo Menabadi, I think it is, Mo Menabadi, vowed not to let it happen in her ward. Fit Fast Fitness, Elias Matu Foundation and Excel Church have also stepped in to back this in Wolverhampton. I've seen numerous posts by numerous people of local businesses willing to donate sandwiches and school meals, which I think is fantastic. I genuinely do. And this has all been sort of off the back of this 22-year-old lad from Manchester who is a footballing icon to obviously United fans, and is a legend in the making to England fans, but he's leading from the front. So when we were talking about role models earlier, and we're talking about Mason Greenwood and Phil Foden, you picked up Gibbs White. Do you think that Marcus Rashford is not just a great ambassador for the game, but just for young English people in general, or young British people?
Yeah, 100%, mate. And let's be honest, what he's doing for the underprivileged school children now isn't the first thing he's done. Obviously, he did the Selfridges campaign for the homeless back just before Christmas last year as well.
Yeah, he did.
So he's got form, and without wanting to speculate on his background or his upbringing, I assume it's come from a place that he knows, unfortunately, all too well. So he's realised now that he's in such a privileged position and what he does in his life, and he wants to give that back. And it's a lesson to us all, to be honest, that there are, whatever happens, there are always people still in underprivileged positions and struggling to get by and living sometimes not even month to month, but week to week, and he's an absolute credit to everything he's trying to achieve. And as you say, wish there were more people with that mindset.
Yeah, definitely. I can actually fill in some of that question that you asked about Rashford's upbringing. So recently, Rashford's been helping out the local food warehouses in Manchester. He's also shared as many businesses as he can who are donating by using the hashtag End Child Food Poverty, and also putting his name in stuff on Twitter as well. His mother's also been helping out local food warehouses. She's also backed to some because of how close this hits home, and that when Marcus Rashford was younger, he and his siblings also had to use food banks. And she continues to raise awareness now. He was recently presented with a football boot from Nike that had messages inscribed on them from all the children he helped for the Belgium game, which I thought was a magic touch. And on top of that, there is a food warehouse that's been named after his mother that, since it was named after his mom, has had 3 times more donations. So it's helped 3 times more people as it stands. So that in itself is a fantastic, goodwill. It's one of those. I don't know if you're old enough to remember this, but they used to do this show on the BBC where they used to meet heroes in the community, and I think it was on a Sunday night. It was like, I can't remember what it was called. Esther Ranson. I think Esther Ranson.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, presented it. But it almost feels like that, with everybody sort of clubbing together. Like we kind of did at the start of the pandemic, where everybody was coming together for everybody. It's only just as we've all started to get back into this cycle that is the 9 to 5 grind, that you're starting to see different elements of people. I did write a little something here, and I did pre-warn you. This is pretty heavy, so I promise if you guys want to skip ahead 2 minutes, that is fine, where we talk about something a bit more upbeat. But I wrote that on a football field, you're expected to lead by example. The eyes of millions are on you, but you are not alone. There are others to hide behind on that pitch, but above all, it's what you leave on that field that matters. The same can be said in life. When the mouths of millions of children go hungry, and the greed of leaders outweighs their duty, when a young 22-year-old man can stand up and speak for those with no voice and rally people with more than words, then what is left on the pitch is worth more than empty promises. Marcus Rashford, MBE, put it best when he said, "These children are our future, and we must allow and encourage them to dream, because sometimes dreams is all they have." You should be ashamed of yourselves and everybody that voted against this. And I hope your conscience is as heavy as the burden placed on every child that goes to bed hungry this half term. Spineless.
Yeah, I've nothing to add to it, mate. Summed it up perfectly.
So that was deep. No, but in all fairness, honestly, I'm proud to be a Red. I'm proud to be English, and I'm proud to see that this young man is literally taking his platform, and he's raising the awareness that is much needed in today's society for something positive, rather than all the negative stories you get from young players or young people in general. Just to see Marcus Rashford, changing people's mentality, and this whole thing is, if it doesn't hit you there, then you're either heartless or you're a Tory. Simple as that.
I think as well, what's so great about it is he's not just using it as a campaign to put his face on for good PR. He is digging in deep. He was at the food bank this morning on BBC News. He's sharing the locations on Twitter today. So he's not just putting his name to it for a PR exercise. It's something he cares deeply about, and wants to see sorted, basically.
Yeah, which is brilliant. Which leads us back into football. Right.
Where we belong.
So, Manchester United played Chelsea this weekend, with Ollie taking Frank on yet again. Some interesting news stories that came out this week were the Premier League squads that were announced. Some major admissions. There were a couple of admissions from Manchester United, which I'm not too upset about. The likes of Phil Jones not being named. Hallelujah. The guy's stealing a living, and he has been stealing a living for at least 3 seasons, ever since he got given that bumper contract by Ollie, and then has miraculously been injured ever since. And Sergio Romero, who unfortunately I think has been done really badly by the club. But Oh, and then Mesut Ozil. Just before we
Yeah.
go on to the next player, Mesut Ozil. What do you think to that?
It's a strange situation. I mean, not just the wages he's on, but obviously he's still you'd assume, because no one's seen him play for about 3 years, but you'd assume he's a player of incredible talent, but you can tell Arteta just doesn't like something about him, but at the same time, if that was his intention, why did he not look to do something about it in the window? And that's the thing I always find so confusing about having the window around the time of the squad registration is why did unless it's a wages issue, because obviously there's such high numbers. Why are they not looking to at least ship them off out on loan or see what they can get from a club in terms of a transfer? So it's, to me, clearly just look like he's not in Arteta's plans.
Yeah, I think he's on something like £300,000 a week, isn't it? Something
madness.
Something north of that.
Yeah.
And obviously a good story came out about him donating all his wages to Gunnosaurus.
Yeah.
Which is dead nice, but at the same time, is absolutely fucking hilarious.
Yeah, I think like you just think to yourself, how much relationship does Ozil have with the Arsenal mascot? You know what I mean?
I don't know. See, I know he's had a lot of stuff that he's been dealing with. Obviously, he's been dealing with political issues in China, hasn't he? With treatment of Muslims and stuff like that. But I would never have thought something like that would have really eaten into him as a professional at Arsenal. And like you say, with the amount of money that he's on and the transfer window just ending, surely somebody somewhere would have picked him up, even if Arsenal would have turned around and said, look, we will pay half his wages, just to get him out of the club if he's that much of an issue. But to then not name him at all in the Premiership squad, he can't come back.
Yeah.
So where next?
I think part of the problem is, going back to it in the registration as well, is what you just said about his wages. Is the problem is if another club still has to put in a percentage of his wages to sign him on loan, that's still an absolutely huge chunk of money. That still could be 100k, 150k a week. It is only a percentage of the loan deal, and there's not many clubs in Europe now that would want to pay that for a player on loan.
Mate,
it's a lot for your own
player. we're paying 200,000 a week for Cavani. he's not played football in 7 months.
That's it. And obviously, and he's still not integrated in your first team yet. And I think that would have been some European. I say European. Potentially you could have gone to somewhere where the money's absolutely massive, but it's if clubs are willing to shed out what he's on as a percentage for a loan fee.
Well, do you know what? It makes me feel, or makes me think, that maybe if Manchester United would have had this information sooner, whether or not we would have put in for him,
I don't know. I think you've got players in his position now, like he wouldn't get in instead of Bruno, and you've still got Van der Beek, who hasn't had much game time yet.
Yeah.
Who could fill in that position as well. So I don't know. And I doubt Arsenal would want to, loan out to, a rival, so to speak. All these years after Van Persie.
I was going to say, we got RVP. He won a title the season after.
I mean, that was 7 years ago, and I think they've learnt their lesson now.
The only reason I sort of say that is because obviously we've signed Donny van der Beek, but we didn't. If we look on the transfers that have actually come into Manchester United, none of them were actually needed, apart from I reckon Telles, because we needed competition for left back. We've got an abundance of midfielders as it is at the moment. When you look at the fact we've got Lingard, Mata, Lingard, Mata, Fred, Pogba, Bruno, Van der Beek, McTominay. We've got 8 centre mids at the moment. So what's one more? It'd be a panic buy. We've got Ozil. £300,000 a week, but we've got Ozil. You know what I mean? It's a bit like this Cavani deal when they were trying to build all the excitement for Cavani coming in, and then all of a sudden it came out that, hang on, he's on £200,000 a week. He hasn't kicked a ball in 7 months. He's had COVID-19. He's been chopping wood and riding horses in Uruguay. Yet we're desperate to bring him in on the very last day of the transfer window, where I thought we'd have done this a hell of a lot sooner. It's not like we had to pay any club for his signature, and actually get him trained and up to speed and out of quarantine, ready for the start of the new season.
Yeah,
But
I think the part of it with United is for the transfer, like kind of the transfer policy ever since Ferguson left has always sort of been about signing names, rather than what they would actually offer to the first
what
team.
we need.
Yeah, and you look at someone like Liverpool as much as they have spent, in high figures with Van Dijk and Alisson, those were key positions they needed, and they've only added to the team. Whereas with United, it like Cavani now is a name, and it's someone that they're maybe looking at more of like a, not so much football terms, but in terms of merchandising and a brand recognition, and Tellez is maybe the exception to that rule because, as you say, you've needed a competition for Luke Shaw for the past couple of seasons, and Tellez is an absolutely quality left back, but it seems to be the exception to the rule at the minute.
I thought you were getting Tellez.
We got linked with him, but I don't know how strong the links were in the end. It would have been an unreal signing, and obviously would fit the would fit what we do.
Put it this way, Deke was 150% sure he was already signed, and he was in the New Hampton fishing, got
a room in the mount already.
Yeah, pretty much. He was there.
Yeah, it was one of those rumours you really want to believe for the meaning and impact of it, but no, unfortunately, I never saw it from like one of those concrete sources, so there was always a bit of skepticism with it.
To be fair, you could have dealt with him. Looking at the Wolves team at the moment, I think that is potentially your weakest area now, because you've got like Kilman, you've had Marcel, Vinagre was there, and then I don't know what happened between him and Nuno for him to fall out of the team as quickly as he did. But if you'd have got a left back in, you were pretty much sorted, weren't you?
I mean, to be honest, we're obviously unlucky in the Olympiacos second leg with Jonny, being off for having such a serious injury. I think that kind of threw off any plan we had. I think we would have bought a left back solely for backup, but the Jonny thing made us maybe try and stopgap it a bit. Marcel will fit in there short term, I think, and he had a great debut against Sheffield United, but unfortunately he came off early in the City game shortly after. So after that, we've sort of been stopgapping a bit with Sayus in there. And he's done well. He's not let us down at all, but you can tell it's just a stopgap. And Marcel should hopefully be back fit now.
Well, to me, Sayus is a really interesting player at the moment. Now, because I look at him and he's played left back, he's played centre back, he's played centre mid. I just kind of expect him to either be nets or up top for like the next one. It's kind of like the Donker when he came in. Like he's a great player. I really like him as a player, but sometimes he looks like a centre back. Sometimes he looks like a number 9. Sometimes he's a solid box to box. Like what you don't want to happen is they become players that are kind of like John O'Shea's. That play multiple positions but never nail them down. I know you've got Cody and you've got Bolly at the moment, who are your centre back pairing, and as long as they're fit, they will always play. But looking at Nuno, and kind of like how Man U set up the other day against PSG, the 5 kind of works, but then when you play in a 5, you lose Adama. So. What do you do? I just sorry for all the Wolves questions. I'm just interested. I don't get to talk Wolves that often anymore. What do you do? Do you go back to a 4 and you stick and twist with Adama because you know the way he plays? Because I think Jimenez has kind of suffered with him not playing recently, or do you go to your 5 and you try and integrate him as a strike partner or just behind, or what? I mean, how do you see it from a Wolves perspective?
To be honest, I mean, obviously, we're so used to the 3/5 at the back now, and one of our main criticisms the past maybe year and a half is that maybe we are slightly too conservative and we don't try and utilise the attacking talent that we do have as much as we should.
Yeah, I think the stats kind of prove that, don't they? You scored. How many? I can't remember what it is. Like you haven't scored in 24 out of your 30 first halves or something like that. which is shocking. I didn't realise it was that bad.
Yeah. But to me, I mean, you know, we've got a solid base, and we've got one of the greatest goalkeepers in the world. You know, that's not an overstatement.
Mate, John Ruddy is the shit.
Absolute generational talent, mate. But no, and you know, and for me, I wouldn't want to change so dramatically from a system that served us so well for three to 4 seasons now.
Yeah.
You can tell everyone knows the system inside out, and even players that are coming in on from the periphery can slot in easily. You know, and you mentioned Kilman earlier. We bought him in against Fulham, and he did himself absolutely the world of good. Monday night he was man of the match against Leeds, and day after he got awarded a brand new contract. You know, so
Yeah.
you can tell that even players that might not necessarily get as much game time are there ready to slot in. And
well, I saw the interview with Conor Cody when he found out that Kilman had given man of the match. I mean, I don't like Scousers, but how can you not like him?
Yeah, honestly, like he's someone that we feel like really lucky to have, not just our captain, but as, you know, the face of the club, so to speak. And I think going back to your earlier point about the discipline and what we're saying about Greenwood, I think this is a team built in Cody's image. You know, it's hard working, it's never say die, you know, and yeah, it's a pleasure to have him as the captain of the team.
So tell me about his England goal then. How proud were you?
Oh, I mean, you know, we'd been kind of shouting, obviously, for him to get a call up for a couple of years now, ever since he got promoted. And we kind of, as we always thought, as long as Southgate kept the four at the back, it was obviously never going to happen. So it was just strange to see him in the penalty area, to be honest. I don't think I've seen him in the penalty area since 2018 when he took a penalty, you know. But no, it was really buzzing to see it. And a cap was one thing, but a goal was icing on the cake, really.
Well, I saw Facebook, obviously, because I've got a lot of people from Wolverhampton on my Facebook as well. Absolutely exploded. It was like Cody mania. There was my captain here, and all these hashtags and all these love arts. And I'm not even exaggerating when I say I must have seen at least 20, 25 posts of at my captain, and it was a picture of Cody. I think it was only Pez that disliked pretty much every one of them.
You know, it's like.
Yeah. But no, it was great to see, and even I felt proud, because a bit of me feels like it's my captain too. Although my allegiance is obviously to Manchester United first. Being from Wolverhampton, there's a lot of love there. So just sticking with, I know we were meant to be getting onto the Premiership teams and one of the funny things that happened recently this week, but Semedo, man, baller. How did you get that across the line?
Well, I mean, I think clearly we kind of struck lucky in the fact that obviously Barcelona were going through a transitional stage now, you know, and he would have probably been one of the scapegoats from that 8-2 game, you know. So as soon as we sold Doherty, it was obviously a gap we needed to fill. So we clearly have, you know, found it based off connections. We have certain connections, but yeah, you know, I think as much as people always kind of try and tear down the Portuguese connection, I think it has a massive say in attracting players like that to the team. You know, they'll go and spend 2 weeks on an international break with them and can just talk up what's happening. You know, so I think not just from a footballing point of view, but from a settling in and a you know, a mindset point of view.
I think it was quite a statement as well by Wolves, the fact that a Barcelona player has come to and what we deemed, and when we talked to other people about it, little old Wolverhampton, you know, he didn't exactly come for the orange chips, although I'm pretty sure he's sampled them by now. I miss them like crazy, man. They don't know what it is, what they are up north. It's nuts. But for you to get a Barcelona player, and not just any old Barcelona player, he's not exactly some washed up 34-year-old. And I know he's had his injuries in the past, but this guy can play. This guy is a genuine baller, and if he stays injury free, you've got one of the best right backs in the league.
And I think what's so great is he's someone who can sort of slot into the system straight away. you know, we played probably how he would want to play. And, you know, he's an attacking right back, right back, wing back. And he could, as I say, I think we play quite similar to the Portugal national team for obvious reasons now, but like it's someone we don't sort of have to just, you know, build up to getting into the first team and getting the ideas. He's kind of easily fit straight away.
Yeah, definitely. So just looking at you bringing in Semedo, and this goes back to what I was saying about Adama earlier. Do you think bringing Semedo in has hurt Adama's, I wouldn't say progression, but his place in the team? Because Adama was filling at right wing back originally, and obviously now Semedo's come in, Adama's had to change, and I feel that he's kind of a little bit lost in this Wolves team at the moment. I don't know, what are your thoughts? Because last year he was a cult hero. This year he just seems to have not really had much of an opportunity.
I think part of it is just the fact that both Podence and Neto have started the season so well. I don't know which of the two you would want to drop out of the team at this point in time. He is sort of a victim of circumstance in having to play right back for the first 2 games this season. Otherwise, he would have been one of that front three, in which case those guys have then built such like a solid run of form. So he is a bit of a victim of circumstance in there. But he did have a start against West Ham in that 4-0 defeat, and he was quite poor, to be honest.
Yeah.
So you saw why he brought Podence back for the next game. But no, I just think he's at the minute he's just a victim of sort of not chopping and changing the team, but change of shape and a slightly new way of playing. So I wouldn't kind of read anything too much of like his form or his place in the squad or anything. I just think at the minute it's going towards a certain way we want to play.
Yeah, going back to that West Ham game, everybody was poor on that pitch, not just the Adama. Jesus Christ, that's the worst I've seen Wolves play in a very long time.
That's probably the worst I've seen us under Nuno, if I'm honest with you. Which you know is a lot to
shocking,
say, really. Yeah.
But West Ham was sort of in the ascendancy. I think if West Ham would have been battered, the next couple of games afterwards, then it would have been a case of what the hell went wrong. But football's been really, really strange this year, hasn't it? So,
I mean, they obviously went and smashed Leicester the week after as well, so we knew it wasn't just a one-off.
yeah, it's true. And Leicester just smashed Man City, so I mean it's all over the place. So, the last Wolves question I'm going to put to you, right? Doherty, you miss him more?
At the time, obviously, it was a strange one, and it looked more stranger selling one of our biggest components of the team, and obviously our longest-serving player as he was, without a replacement at the time. There was a lot of panic because we were like, who we're going to replace him with? You know, who's going to slot in there? And obviously, it was Adama for a few games. But yeah, I think it was just a matter of freshening things up, and while he fit into the team very well, you could see there was maybe a bit of staleness to things, and that relates to Jota obviously being sold as well. I think the only thing with Spurs is just the fact that it was a sort of rival for where we wanted to be in the table made it a bit more confusing. But in hindsight, replacing with Semedo has obviously looked good business.
And you got an absolute wedge for Jota as well to go to Liverpool, which I don't think anybody saw coming, to be honest. I didn't see anything until the deal was more or less done.
I think, you know, like growing up, like, you know, Robbie Keane to Coventry for 5 million was a massive payout in my day, you know. So yeah, 41 million. It was actually like you'll find a lot of Wolves fans who didn't want him to go, but then in my opinion, it was a good fee, too good to turn down for a player not who you would say was quite streaky for me. So. And with obviously that was an area of the pitch where we're quite strong anyway. So while it was sad to see him go, we couldn't really sniff at the fee.
Yeah, I must admit, it's usually Scousers that rob people. But the Wolves had the last laugh this time. So going back into what we were talking about at the start, before we got into Wolves chat, which I actually really enjoyed because, like I say, it's nice to actually have an
It's good
intelligent
you had to stop
conversation.
me, to be honest. It's good you had to stop me.
It's nice having an intelligent conversation about Wolverhampton rather than talking to the lads in the WhatsApp group because often the dickhead.
They're watching this back, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. Yeah, so the Premiership squad. So one player that got announced, which honestly at first I thought was a joke, and when I went on the Wikipedia page is absolutely brilliant for it. I don't know if somebody's actually edited this or it's legit, but was Petr Cech being named in the Chelsea squad? He's 38. It says here, and I quote: combined role of player and technical and performance advisor for English club Chelsea. He also plays semi-professional ice hockey as a goaltender for Guildford Phoenix. He's also a keen drummer who posts covers for songs by the Foo Fighters, Incubus, and Coldplay. At first, this was assumed to be an error, but Chelsea later confirmed that Petr Cech had been named in the Premier League squad this season. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I've got to say, like, I'm not hugely surprised about it. I only say that because obviously Mendy got injured on the international break, and with how poor Kepa's been, you know, they clearly didn't fancy whoever was next in line, whoever that was to be. You know, Chelsea always sort of renowned for having so many players out on loan, so it might literally just have been a case of an emergency, you know, and
I know,
a
but
doubt of when Mendy was coming back.
are you telling me they've got nobody in the academy or nobody in the under 23s or wherever currently that they can call upon, that they have to get a twice retired bloody goalkeeper who's 38 now, back into the name squad? I mean, I know he came on as a technical advisor, but then he started working as a goalkeeping coach, didn't he, to try and help Kepa out, and clearly nothing but Jesus can help Kepa at this moment. I think even he'll struggle. And now he's in the fold. And I did see Frank saying, well, it's very unlikely he will play, but we are in unlikely circumstances. If I was a Chelsea fan, one, that wouldn't fill me full of confidence. And two, I 100% guarantee he will make an appearance at some point this season. Even for shits and gigs, he will be there at some point. And it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea have a really long cut run, that they're bad luck with goalkeepers, he'll end up having to play at some point. Because they had...
But I mean, even when he left Arsenal, you know, he was still a high quality goalkeeper. I mean, I think one of the main reasons he sort of got pushed out of there a bit was more about his ability with his feet and not being able to play out from the back like Emery wanted, more than his actual goalkeeping ability. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that if he did make an appearance, he could easily slot in and into majority of the teams in the Premier League. You know what I mean?
If Chelsea had
a goalkeeper, he's not out of like age range. You know, that's usually still a good age for goalkeeper. So
I don't know,
it wouldn't
mate.
surprise if he's still got the ability.
He's ticking on a bit, you know.
I mean, mate, ice hockey goalkeeper at 38, though, mate. That's rough going. That is
semi-professional.
Yeah, I don't know what like the form of Guildford Phoenix is like or anything, you know, but
I wish I'd have looked into it, to be honest. But however, I did look into a few stats. So my argument has always been that Peter Schmeichel is the greatest goalkeeper the world has ever seen, bar none. Keep your Gordon Bankses, keep your Buffons. It doesn't matter who you're going to throw at me. I'll always say Peter Schmeichel is number one. However, when I was looking at his stats earlier, I don't know whether I have to kind of potentially think about it, but still go with Schmeichel. He was the quickest goalkeeper in Premier League history to get 100 clean sheets. He did it in 180 games. He's got the most clean sheets in a Premiership season, which is 24. He's got the most clean sheets in Premiership history, which is 202. And he made a whopping 1,005 saves in 443 Premier League appearances. Over 1,000 saves. And let's not forget, he's had some of the best defences the Premiership has ever seen in
Yeah,
front of
yeah.
him. You know, your John Terry's, your Carvalhos, your Desai's, and you know what I mean. And he still made 1,005 saves. That's nuts.
I think, people forget how like genuinely unbeatable that early Mourinho Chelsea team was. I think, and he was a huge part of that. He never looked like he was going to concede really. And I
No.
think, like you mentioned, that sort of back pairing in front of him of Carvalho and Terry was, if I remember, was it the 03-04 season? If I remember, was absolutely like masterclass.
Yeah, you had one defender that was a master of the dark arts, and then you had one defender who was a master of literally throwing himself in front of anything that moved.
Yeah.
And also missing penalties, just wanting to get that one in. And sleeping with other players' wives.
Well, yeah, we
get that one in as well.
Hope he don't watch that back.
But yeah, I mean, it. Don't get me wrong. I like it because it adds a bit of variety to the Premiership. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a bit of fun, isn't it? Whether or not it's going to pay off, I never know. Chelsea are one of those teams that sometimes I look at, and especially at the start of the season, I looked at them and I thought, Jesus Christ! Like all across the field, barring the goalkeeper, they're absolutely solid. But they're leaking goals left, right, and centre. Their new signing goalkeeper has had it. Willy Caballero seems to be slightly out of favour again now. Kepa is just an absolute disaster, and it makes me kind of like warm and fuzzy at the feeling that I know I'm going to see Petr Cech pretty soon. We're going to see him don that famous helmet once again.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise you if he sort of only makes, like, I don't know, rare like cup appearances, or if they've had like a quick turnaround from the Champions League to the league, but I genuinely think it's just a really bad like coincidence on their part that they've had Mendy injured and then Kepa's such poor run of form.
Yeah.
I think if he was to make an appearance, it would be strange. But as I say, I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if he was still of a high quality.
Wouldn't it be brilliant if he played all the rest of the games at the end of the season?
I mean, to be honest, mate, you like anyone who's got to play beyond that defence these days is onto a hiding, really.
Yeah, which I think's nuts, because when you look at the actual Chelsea back line, I mean, they've got certain players. They've got Chilwell, which is brought in to strengthen. Reece James, who I've still got high hopes for, who I think's a good talent. Thiago Silva, he's looking a bit better, but he's obviously started off really ropey. But when you first come to the league, it's going to happen. Some players don't take to it straight away, and I suppose when you're at the back, you have to adapt very, very quickly, or you get eaten alive. And then there's the midfield in front of them with missing players like Kante, with that bit of solidity in the middle. Maybe they need to start looking at him and probably bringing him back, because at the moment I think, and what they need to do, and I think it's going to be quite exciting to see when we play him the weekend, is they need to bring that rigidness that you were on about earlier back into the middle of the park. And I think when they've got a combative CDM, who was the best CDM in the world like 2 seasons ago, might take some of the pressure off the defence, because God knows the goalkeeper fucking needs it at the moment. And I think even the defenders do, because you see it with Liverpool, like Trent and Robertson and Van Dijk didn't become rubbish overnight, but when you haven't got that person behind you in net who he's going to bail you out of any mistake that you make, all of a sudden that confidence is so fragile that if it continues to happen, you then become bad defenders with a bad goalkeeper, and then your midfield can't keep up. We've seen it in Manchester United, where the midfield won't hold the ball, defenders are under constant pressure, and all of a sudden DDG looks pants, where he was like the best goalkeeper in the world 2 seasons ago. So I think for Chelsea's point of view, they need to shore it up, but to put Petr Cech in goal would be, honestly, probably be my highlight. It's Premier League season.
I think, to be honest, like relating it to what you said about De Gea, part of the problem is not just the goalkeeper, but like Lampard has rotated the centre backs quite a number of times as well. Like some weeks it's Christensen and Zuma, other weeks it can be Silva and Zuma, and then sometimes Yeah. Sometimes obviously then he's got Aspilicueta in centre, and then Ollie's done the same. Sort of doesn't know what his best centre back pairing is. Tried Boy back there until he's injured again. Obviously tried Lindelof in there. So I think sometimes a goalkeeper relies on that stability in front of him as much as the defence does behind them. You know what I mean?
A bit of consistency.
The
problem we've had at Manchester United is that we have so many mediocre players in key areas, especially at centre back. It's almost frightening that we've spent this amount of money and continue to fund the players' wages to the extent we have, when they're not actually very good. Like Boy is a fantastic defender 90% of the time when he's fit, but he's a liability. He's nuts, and he will throw himself into challenges that ends up either hurting the player or hurting himself. Yeah, and we've just seen it now. He's out for another 3 to 4 weeks. The guy is literally has the injury record as long as his arm, and the consistency of fucking Rivita, man, of Porridge. He looks great, but he's so injury prone. And then you have the likes of Phil Jones, exactly the same issue. Always potential for there to be a terrible sort of error in his game, and the faces he pulls become memes the next day, and so that can't be good for anybody's confidence. You've got Lindelof, who I think he's incredibly poor in the air, although he's quite fast, sorry. But he's terrible when the ball comes over the top. You've got Harry Maguire that's quite big, but he's got a really slow turn of pace. And he's the defender that needs to carry the ball out from the back. And the only bright spark I've literally seen at centre half for 2 years, maybe even 3 years, I could probably go back that far, is Twanzebe the other night, who looked strong, powerful, energetic, and he's been out for a year. And the last game was against Colchester. His first game back's against PSG, and Neymar and Mbappe were in his back pocket. So a little bit of me wants us to let Boy have that time off and break him down like we did with Axel, but he's not as young as Axel. So I don't think we've got the luxury of time on our side. So at the next transfer window, if we don't address this, and this is one of the key areas, what we were talking about earlier, about buying players for the name and rather than for the position. If we don't get a centre-back, we're really going to be in trouble. We need like an Upamecano. We need somebody who's young with some longevity. Because now Liverpool have lost Van Dijk, they'll be looking at another centre-back as well.
Yeah.
And they'll know they need cover because, like you were saying earlier, they had the likes of Karius and Lovren playing at centre-back and goalkeeper. They bought Van Dijk and Alisson, won the title the season after. They pushed Liverpool, didn't they, to like a record points haul, and then they won the title the season after. They were buying for the position rather than buying for the name. I know Van Dijk costs a lot of money, but he was from Southampton. It's not like he was a Koulibaly at that time.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we need to do. So, right. So I digress. Let's look at this week's fixtures. I did have the fixtures downstairs, and when me, Sean, and Joe looked at them, please do not take any betting tips from me because all the fixtures I got 2.
Luckily,
right.
I'm not a better, so you'll be all right.
No, I literally got 2 out of all the fixtures.
God.
Last week. I think
this
Joe
is
got
an impossible season to try and predict, you know what I mean? So
yeah. So I mean any of these games could be 10-1 or 19-2. And if Chelsea put Petr Cech in goal, then
yeah.
So we'll start. So basically this is how it works, Johnny, is I'm gonna call out a fixture, you're gonna tell me who's gonna win, and then why. At the time of recording, this game might have already kicked off, but by the time it goes out, this game would have finished. Aston Villa Leeds. I'm guessing before you say anything, you're going to go with Leeds because you hate Villa.
No, I think I've got to say, I think Villa are in such a good run of form, and you can tell how high their confidence is.
Yeah.
I think chatting to one of my best friends is a Villa season ticket holder, and I think what he's told me is that they've learned on their mistakes from last season. And getting Barkley in has been a really shrewd move for them.
It's been a great touch, isn't it, Barkley?
Yeah, and the Watkins transfer as well. I think it's really giving them a focal point. So no, I fancy Villa tonight.
Fancy Villa. All right, cool. I'm I want to side with Villa because I've just put Barkley in my my
Did you
fancy
fancy?
football team. I've tried to pick a bit of a differential, and because I can't afford Grealish, I've gone with the next best thing.
Yeah.
I think Villa are in fantastic form, but I don't think Leeds are actually playing bad enough to warrant the
No,
points that
no.
they've got at the moment. And somebody's going to come unstuck against Leeds. I'll tell you what. I'll side with you. I'll go with Villa.
Yeah.
I know. I'm a bit hesitant because I think Leeds have got a result in them somewhere.
I think they do. I think, judging them obviously from our game Mondays, part of the problem has been, I mean, apart from obviously the Liverpool and the Fulham game, is for them is converting chances.
Yeah.
Is they'll create chances as much as they want, but a lot of it is erratic finishing and hitting the target sometimes.
Yeah, and I did speak to a Leeds fan at work about this, and I did say previous to them playing Wolves, because he drove past me and he went, "You ready to be dick tonight?" And I thought he was coming on to me, but he was on about the football. And I turned around to him and I went, "If you don't beat Wolves in the first half, mate, they'll rumble you." And he was like, "No, we've got too much up top. Costa will have a field day and Rodrigo. It'll be 3-0 by half time." And when it was 0-0, when I woke up, because I fell asleep early, when I woke up in the morning and saw Wolves had won, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah.
Second half, Wolves will
Well,
always come out second half.
I think it was that, and the problem is, as much as they had a lot of possession and chances, they didn't test Patricio too much.
Yeah.
So going back to creating chances is easy for them. A lot of the time, it's finishing them off.
Do you rate Bamford?
Unfortunately, I think he's going to be one of those like strikers who's maybe too good for the Championship, but not quite at Prem level yet. I could see Bielsa maybe trying to put Rodrigo up there sooner rather than later, to be honest.
I think he's gash, I do. I watched him last year. Every Leeds game I watched, he's it in the bar, he's in the post, it's going wide.
Yeah.
Eventually,
and you know what?
It's
surprised how unpopular he actually is with Leeds fans, considering how many goals he grabs for them. For that reason solely, he gets a lot of goals, but he should get more based on how many chances he actually has.
So we've both gone with a Villa win. West Ham City, tomorrow's first game.
I fancy City, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think they always do quite well at that stadium as well. And I think Pep will rotate the team a bit, obviously having the Champions League in midweek, or having just had it, sorry.
Yeah.
So I think, I fancy City.
I think with Surge coming back, it's a massive, massive boost. I'm hoping it's the Surge of all those seasons ago, because Surge is one of my favourite. I hate to say it, obviously being a rival, he's one of my most favourite Premier League strikers ever. I think he's an absolute monster
quality.
when he's on it. Easy one for me, Man City, all day. Bit of a derby, but a bit of a boring game on paper. Fulham Palace.
See, this is obviously massive for both teams.
Is this where Scotty Parker picks up a few points, or?
I think it really depends on what Palace turn up. Because some weeks they can really look threatening and create so many chances, but other weeks they just look paper thin. I think Fulham, it'll be. I think that getting their first point last week would have given that boost of confidence. And Lookman's looking absolutely on fire at the minute. No, you know what? I'll pick out Fulham. I mean, Palace's away form is always a bit inconsistent, so I'll stick with Fulham. Yeah,
I think Palace. It's solely dependent on whether or not Zaha turns up, isn't it? They look a much better team when he's on form. They've got Van Aanholt coming back. That Mitchell, he's slotted in well. I've even heard that they're going to look to put Van Aanholt on the right wing and keep Mitchell, or left wing, wherever. But I honestly, from what I've seen of Fulham so far this season, they just look dreadful.
Yeah,
they just look really poor. I know Mitrovic is trying a hell of a lot, but he's huffing and puffing, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of quality left in the squad. So for me, I'm going to go Palace. So it's the first one we've disagreed on.
Yeah.
We'll come back to my game. Liverpool Sheffield. The return of Ryan Brewster.
You see, I think obviously, like in normal circumstances, you would pick Liverpool, but I would stick with them as well as because of Sheffield being in such a poor run of form as well. Like they've obviously started the season much below the standard they set last year. So I'd fancy Liverpool for this one.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to go with Liverpool. I was watching a podcast. I think I said it on the first one that we did of this by the Filthy Fellas, and one of the lads on there, I think he might have been Tigo, said that he thought that Sheffield United would be going down, and I thought it was an absolute madness that he said that.
Yeah.
But he's been proved right so far. I think Sheffield have probably looked one of, if not the poorest team in the league, and that's including West Brom. But they score goals, they just can't win. So yeah, I'll go with Liverpool on that one. Game after that, interesting again because of English strikers and teams that are finding one team that's found their form and one team that's bouncing back is Southampton versus Everton.
The thing is, obviously Everton have started such a great start to the season, but I think if I'm right, Rodriguez is out. I believe
he trained.
Did he?
Yeah. So it's only just come out that he's trained. Yeah.
Obviously, Richarlison will be suspended.
He is,
But St Mary's is a tricky place. It really is, and like Southampton are one of those teams that you never see them sort of pushing up the table, but they're always such a dangerous team. I'll stick with a draw for this one.
Draw with that.
Yeah.
I think if Rodriguez plays, then I think Everton will take this. So I just think DCL's just in too good a form at the moment. Yeah. I know it's going to have to tail off at some point, but I just don't see it being Southampton. I just think because of how high they push up sometimes. Yeah. With Everton being quite good at nullifying the midfield and then springing the counter. I don't know. I think it'll be tight, but yeah, Everton.
I wonder how much Everton put into the derby. Obviously both physically and mentally could have taken a lot out of them, and obviously clearly a couple of injuries and suspensions to cope with, which they haven't really had yet. So I wonder how much the derby took out of them.
And also with the erratic form of Pickford, I think Danny Ings will be licking his lips, won't he?
Yeah. And I think they're a team that always look high on confidence to me. They enjoy the way they play and they've got a lot of quality in the team. So they're always quite like a team to watch because of what they can offer. It's just that they don't stick to it all the time.
Yeah. You're up next. Wolves versus Newcastle. Taking it home win all day.
Yeah. I think having 2 wins in a row is going to give us a big boost, and obviously keeping clean sheets in both. The only thing is that games against Newcastle always seem particularly gritty. They're always pretty tense. We've drawn against them the last 3 times we've played now. So
you draw.
As much as I don't want to, I think obviously my heart will tell me win, but yeah, I'll stick with a score draw for that.
Yeah, with a draw. Yeah, I think if St Maximin turns it on, I think it might be a particularly rough first half. Let's put it that way for Wolves.
It's always a rough first half for us. You know what I mean? The one thing I'll say is I did read today. It looks like Darlow, their second choice keeper, is doubtful, so they might have to give their third choice keeper a debut. So that could obviously depend on that as well. But who's to say he's not going to come in and have the game of his life? It's just how it's written sometimes.
Well, you're welcome for that because we peppered his goal with 28 shots. We set the bar after Spurs absolutely annihilated him the week before. So So you go for a score draw on that one. I'm going to go with my heart. My head says draw. My heart says the Wolves. So I'll go with the Wolves to win that one. Yeah. After that, we've got Arsenal versus Leicester. It's potentially interesting game, this.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously both played last night. So you wonder how fresh either are going to be, So, and Leicester sort of 2 steps forward, 1 step back a bit this season, Obviously you have that City result, but then you have the West Ham game and then losing to Villa at home, So it's really hard to read. I'll go Arsenal. So I think Arteta's really help to fix their issues now.
Yeah, I mean, I much prefer watching Arsenal play the way they do under Arteta. I think they were absolutely god awful under Emery. But even with Arteta getting them to play the way he wants them to play, and with Thomas Partey coming in and stuff like that, I still see some of the same old fragilities in Arsenal, especially at the back, which worries me a little bit. And I just think Leicester, with Vardy and the pace that they have, will be able to, like with Castagna at the wing, Vardy through the top. I don't know if Pereira's back yet. Justin is a pretty good deputy. I honestly think Leicester are going to give him a hell of a game.
And the one thing I did notice from the game last week is I believe Soyuncu's out for a good period of time now as well.
Yeah,
which
he is. Yeah,
obviously a huge loss for them too. But then they're quite big on the guy who made his debut last night. I forget his name. Fonfu, is it the Belgian defender? Is he? I might be completely wrong.
I don't know. I'm going to have to take your word for it because I missed the football last night.
You might have to edit that out. But yeah, and they're pretty high on him, so I guess it depends on how much he can slot back in there.
So Soyuncu and Fonfu, that'll be fun for.
That'll be fun for commentators. I'm gonna have to try and remember his name.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with Leicester just because I just think Arsenal defensively still look pretty poor, but I think going forward they look a lot better. So yeah, I'll go Leicester. A really boring game on paper, this one. Brighton West Brom. I think I say boring game. Brighton actually playing some decent football, and West Brom scoring for fun but losing. So it might actually be a decent match. So yeah, Brighton West Brom.
I think this has got a draw written all over it, mate, to be honest. I think Bilic is going to, as much as he'll see it as a chance to get 3 points, I just think Brighton are actually quite strong attacking, and they've got a fairly solid back line. And Albion don't seem to score many. I mean, Chelsea game aside. But yeah, I'd go a draw for this one as well.
Yeah, I think Maupay is going to be interested in this one because I know he can get at West Brom, and he obviously, I mean, he got us quite fucking badly in that game, and he has looked like he's about to turn it on at some point. But he's looked like that in different seasons anyway, that he's about to turn it all on, and we never actually kind of see it. But for West Brom, I think some of the young players have got. Is it Pereira? In the midfield. Yeah, really good talent. So I think that'll be interesting, but I'm probably going to go score draw on this one. And Lamperty, who I was kind of championing towards the back end of last season, that I thought he'd be good, and obviously looking how he started at Brighton, he looks class as well. So yeah, score draw.
The interesting thing about West Brom as well is obviously they'll probably give a debut to like Colin Grant as well. And obviously he's scored a bagful in the Championship for Huddersfield. Obviously, it depends if they start him because they might stick with Canoe. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he's one of those Championship strikers who can step up.
Well, you've just given a load of praise to Ollie Watkins, so don't backtrack on it now.
Yeah.
And the last game of the weekend is Burnley versus Spurs. How do you see this one being? And it's Burnley at home.
You know, it's a strange one because like Spurs in a little way, like Leicester's, they've had those quality results, but then they've had that sham of a last 10 minutes against West Ham last week, and as much as they were well rotated last night against Lask, you'd assume them to like start big guns again. But Burnley's such like a grim place to go, you know, and of how desperate they are for points. I wouldn't be surprised if Burnley got something out of it, to be honest. But I'll stick with Spurs because I just think the way that Jose's got them playing, and how he sort of shifted Kane's role around now, I fancy them, and they're playing some quality football.
Yeah, I'm going to take Spurs as well, but I don't think it's going to be the free flowing Spurs we've seen. Like you say, Burnley are a bit like a Veruca, aren't they? Like a war at the Premiership. They really just piss teams off, don't they? And frustrate them.
The thing I'll say about Burnley is it's very rare someone outplays them. Like if they beat them, they've got to dig in, and it's never a pretty victory. It's always having to back a bit, dig in and win ugly.
Yeah, and that's what they do. They genuinely just seem to win ugly
Very
all the
hard to
time.
beat. Very hard to beat.
And I think that will frustrate Jose and his players even more. And then you watch them go to your friend and nick it, the bastards. So that's all the fixtures then. So this has been Back of the Internet. So thank you very, very much, John, for coming on tonight and helping us out. It's been great to talk not only Wolves, but obviously Petr Cech, all the madness in between it, and even touch on some subjects that are quite close to both of our hearts. But it's been a really, really good podcast. I've genuinely enjoyed
it, mate.
your time in your company, and having an actual intellectual conversation based around Wolverhampton-led football. When you speak to the lads I speak to, and most,
mate, don't throw me under the bus here,
mate. It's like the difference of talking to bloody I don't know, the mind of Stephen Hawking and a cactus.
Wow, I'll take it.
Is there anything you want to say just before you go, or anything you want to plug or talk about quickly?
Not really, mate. Just thanks for having me on, and been a pleasure to chat football.
Yeah, most definitely. And Johnny, with United playing Wolves in a not so distant future, I'm definitely going to get you back on with a couple of the lads that we've been talking about in this podcast as well. So that should be fun. It might just be me and 3 of you lot just ganging up
against you.
How much of a turncoat I am, and how I own a Wolves top and half scarf and bits and pieces. But no, I look forward to it. Been a genuine pleasure. I've been Jay from the Back of the Internet. This has been Johnny, and we are out. Peace.
Bye, mate.